A plan is being put in place to clear a 42 billion naira debt owed by Nigerian banks to telecommunications operators. Customers have been charged for making payments using a code on a mobile phone, but the money hasn't been getting passed on. Chinemerem Joseph reports.
Banks have been charging customers up to 50 naira every time they made a payment using a code on the mobile device. That could be for topping up airtime, transferring money, or confirming orders. It's called unstructured supplementary service data and is usually done by typing in star, then a PIN number, followed by the hash key. But for the past 2 years, the banks haven't been passing the fee onto mobile service operators, which are due part of the money. Now, a debt of more than 40 billion naira has built up and the telecommunications firms threatened to stop the banks using their services.
Because of the reverse billing the telecom companies were doing, reverse billing meaning that they let the customers enjoy the USSD and the MTOs, the telecom companies were billing the banks, or holding the banks accountable for those charges. So the issue now is, will you go back to the customers and retroactively tell customers to pay back?
The Central Bank of Nigeria has stepped in, putting in place a settlement plan. It's not the first time the bank had to intervene.
4 months ago, I held a meeting with some telecom companies as well as the leading banks in Nigeria at Central Bank Lagos. And the issue of the cost of USSD came up. The banks are the people who give this business to the telecom companies. And I leave the banks and the telecom companies to engage.
The fee charged to customers has now been set at a fixed rate of 6 naira 98 kobo per transaction. The banks will collect the charge directly from the account of customers and remit when necessary to telecom operators. It's hoped this will allow more people to access financial services. Chinemerem Joseph, Arise News.
All right, joining us now is Gbenga Adebayo, the chairman of the Association of Licensed Telecommunications Operators of Nigeria. Thank you so much for joining us on Newsnight. Well, there seems to be some kind of resolution, by the central bank, of course, between the telcos and the banks. But how does this resolution protect Nigerian customers?
Thank you for having me. What is important is that the rate that's now being introduced as approved by the two regulators is far cheaper than what was being charged by the banks. And it is believed that this will help financial inclusion. It will also improve access to financial inclusion services as well.
Mr. Adebayo, how much of this amount of money becomes a burden on the neck of consumers?
Absolutely not. The reason being that in times past, subscribers were charged as much as 10 naira per USSD transaction. In some cases, they were charged as much as 20 naira for transfer between accounts when the USSD services is being applied. And with the rate now pegged at 6 naira 98 kobo, irrespective of how many sessions you have, we think it is cheaper, and we think that this will enable more access. Let me also add very quickly that a large number of subscribers are people who use feature phones, and those phones are mainly phones that cannot do large-scale data application. And so it is believed that given the number of people who are using USSD, you are using feature phones only, if the USSD services are offered cheaper for the subscriber, it will be better for everyone, and it will enhance financial inclusion.
From all indication that this 42 billion debt owed by the banks to the telcos, the burden of paying that huge sum of money is being shifted to the Nigerian consumers. Is that not the case?
No, that's not the case. Because that's not in the consideration at this time. What we have decided and agreed at the meeting with the regulators is that we'll agree at a rate that is applicable and chargeable now for the USSD services, and the issue of repayment of the loan that is due to the operators will be paid over a period of time. That's not in the consideration of fixing the rate that has now been agreed for the USSD. I think the major factor that has been taken into account in this case is affordability of USSD services.
Well, there's always the concern of consumers, those of us who use mobile phones and those who use USSD. There's always the concern that one way or the other, some money is being taken from your credit to pay for some of this. Is there any truth in this at all?
No, there is absolutely no truth in that. We can't speak for the banks because we don't have any access to their charging plan and their rate plan. But what we do know is that as far as the USSD session is concerned, in times past, subscribers were charged according to each sessions that they use. But in this case and in the new regime, we are now going to have only one session, one rate charge, irrespective of how many sessions that you use the USSD. So on the long run, the current regime is cheaper and will be cheaper than the previous regime. So Nigerians will be better for it, actually.
Well, that seems to be cheering news, but I wonder if Nigerians really are convinced that this will be eventually in their favor. And would you say that, I mean, one is even wondering exactly where was the regulator, you know, that you'd have this huge amount of debt. Is it a failure of a regulator or, you know, regulatory failure?
Unless there are escalations, normally regulators are not involved in commercial issues. They would normally set floor price. They would normally set some kind of band within which players can charge. But normally, regulators are not involved in commercial agreement. And what has happened in this case, it was transactions that were ongoing. I got into some difficult situation. We got into this huge debt burden, and then the regulators had to intervene. So in the normal course of business, really and truly, we do not have interference of regulators in commercial matters.
Now, should we take it for granted that whatever amount of money running into billions of naira, whatever it was in the past that is owed, is now being swept away and it's Jubilee time and we're starting all over?
No, the debt is not being forgiven and the debt is not being wiped away. The fact is that it is still under consideration, and as you may have read in the press release, the expectation is that as we continue in the regime of new transaction, parties will sign to some form of settlement agreement, and this is what we use in defraying the old debt that we have. But certainly there is no case of debt forgiveness. There is no discussion around sweeping away the debt. It's a debt that has been incurred and the money has to be paid. But what is important is the way forward, which has now been agreed, and that's that there will be no additional charges on USSD users. The rate that has been fixed now will be flat. So irrespective of the number of times that you use those sessions, there will be no further charges applied on you by your financial institution. So the money that is being expected now will be one-off. The banks have assured that there will be no charges, no extra charges on the subscribers for use of USSD services beyond the 698 cover that has been agreed.
Let's hope that, well, telcos and the banks actually keep to the terms of those agreements. I wonder if you can even give us one or two very key important, you know, aspects of those, the terms of agreement. And then again, telcos seem to say that, you know, customers do have a choice as far as using the USSD code is concerned. Is that really the absolute truth? Can we really stay away from using your USSD code?
Yes, you can. Yes, you can. There are several access to the banking platform. You can use the banking application, that's the app. You can use the automatic teller machines, which is the ATM, and then you can use USSD. So USSD is just one of those access points to the banking application. And even in the communication that has been issued, it's stated there that USSD is just one of the very many options that are available for subscribers to access their banks. But one key point that is important for me to emphasize is in the aspect of financial inclusion. The conversation around the new rate is based mainly on financial inclusion for many Nigerians. And that is what has been taken into account.
Mr. Adebayo, thank you very much for your contribution on this conversation. We really appreciate what you've input.